I feel like I'm walking around in a fog. I'm not the only one, right?
Right. Totally not. Yeah.
What is
Yeah.
happening with us? Is this
Yeah.
normal? This kind of feeling of kind of walking around like you're in shock a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's really normal. And I'm so happy that you asked me to talk about this because, you know, I think it can be so normalizing to talk about what we're feeling, you know, and I think everybody's having very similar feelings right now. So
Sure.
it's really important. And, you know, as you know, I'm a counselor, but I also offer stress resilience coaching. And one of the things that I talk to people about is, you know, you're hearing a lot about reducing stress right now
Right.
and doing our best to, you know, do stress reduction. And what I talk to people about is, you know, that's almost impossible, especially in times like right now.
Yeah.
And so I talk instead about, you know, building stress resilience, because
Huh.
we can move through this stress and come out the other side, you know. And one of the major parts of this is, I think, acknowledging our feelings. And there's such a range of things that people are feeling right now. I mean, certainly fear, worry, anxiety, and also, you know, grief and sadness and loneliness for some folks. And I think it's important to acknowledge those things.
So name it, right? You
With
name
that,
what it is that you're feeling.
yeah, just to acknowledge it and know that it's so normal and you're not alone in what you're feeling. And even though it doesn't help the feeling to go away, when you know that you're not alone, it can be comforting to know that other people are also in the same boat and experiencing the same things.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like some of us feel a little guilty for feeling weird about this. I mean, we're being asked to stay home and sit on the couch, basically. So,
Right.
you know,
Right.
it's not like we're going to war or
Right.
suffering PTSD in some major way, but at the
Right.
same time,
Right.
it is a major disruption to our lives.
Yeah, totally. Totally. And I think, you know, I've actually talked to a lot of people who feel some kind of guilt or embarrassment for having strong feelings and emotions right now. And, you know, it's just important to realize our normal routines are so disrupted. So our usual ways of coping with things are not there anymore.
Hmm.
And so for a lot of folks, they're experiencing more intense emotions that maybe they're not used to. And that's another normal thing that's happening. So I think it's even more important that, you know, we you know, get support from others and talk to others about what we're experiencing.
Yeah.
There was an article I read recently that I posted on, and it was the title was something like that feeling you're experiencing is grief. And I thought that was really, I've been thinking about that a lot lately, because we're all experiencing you know, small and big, right? Different kinds of losses.
Right.
And we don't just grieve losses of, you know, a death of a person. We grieve all kinds of losses. So if you think about, you know, the different things people are losing right now, you know, we miss people. We miss seeing people in person, our loved ones, right? So that's a loss. We have a loss of that our feeling of safety and security, no matter who you are, right? We have a loss of what we thought our future was going to be for the next few months or whatever. And even like the loss of events, like, you know, proms and graduations are being canceled, weddings are being canceled,
Right.
concerts, you know, things we were looking forward to. It's like, and one of my teachers said today, you know, it's like a cascade of losses right now. And so it's important to realize that we grieve all losses. So, you know, you may be experiencing feelings you're not used to, and that could be part of the grief, you know? And, you know, so the grieving process involves so many different feelings: sadness, anger, frustration, even feeling numb, or even depressed. And so, you know, and we don't go through the feelings of grief in a linear fashion. We kind of can bounce around. So that can be very, very hard for people, especially if they're not used to it or they haven't experienced this before.
You talked about stress management. I mean, do you have tips for grief management?
Grief management. Yeah, I think part of that is going to be a lot of self-compassion. and realizing, reminding yourself that this is all normal. There's nothing wrong with you for having these feelings. What I've noticed is some people will be experiencing all these feelings of grief and then kind of tell themselves that they shouldn't be feeling that, or, they should be feeling more positive, or they should be putting on a brave face, and I think just realizing none of that's really accurate. Like, you're feeling what you're feeling. And so to acknowledge that and know that you're not alone. And realize that, these are all normal reactions to an abnormal situation, right? I think that's so important.
Yeah.
And another part of it too is, I read that the Greek roots of the word pandemic mean pertaining to all people. And I think that can also apply to our emotions, that really all people are in the same boat, experiencing some of the same emotions. And so knowing that it can feel like an emotional roller coaster, and that's normal right now. So there's going to be lots of highs and lows. And what I found for a lot of people, including myself, is that we can swing from, sadness and grief as part of that grief and fear, and then swing back to hope and appreciation and gratitude. And that swing can happen really quickly. And sometimes it feels strange, but to realize that that's all really normal right now. So I think that, that can help with sort of knowing that, just knowing that the grief is normal can be helpful, I think, for folks.
Yeah, and a lot of people are at home with their families. So that may be kids who are out of school, that may be husbands who are out of work, parents perhaps. Everybody grieves a little differently, and you were talking about those swings of emotions. So how do we all get along through this when we're reacting differently?
That's a good question. And I think, I think, the coping strategies are so individualized right now, because some people are, really overwhelmed by all the newness, right? Like learning how to work from home, how to serve customers and clients from home. The learning curve is so steep. How to learn, how to get along with your family members in a different way when you're all at home more together, right? Too much togetherness in some ways.
Yeah.
And so I think that can be, figuring that out is, I think everybody's in that boat right now. And being overwhelmed by that, very normal. Being
just
overwhelmed
showing each
by all
other
we
some
have to
grace
do.
too, that we all need grace at this point, right?
Yes, exactly. Giving ourselves some grace. There's no manual on how to do a pandemic. There's no manual about how to handle all these experiences and all these feelings that we're having. And so, to trust yourself that, you'll be able to reach out to people. You'll be able to find ways to cope with this. So just, that universal piece of self-compassion and helping us work with all these feelings. And I think too, something you had asked me about before was almost feeling like you can't get motivated to do things, accomplish things that you want to do. And
I have this list of stuff. You think, oh, okay, well, I'm going to be home for a month.
Right.
So I can accomplish all of these things, and I'll be darned if I can get going on any of them. I don't know what my problem is.
Exactly. Well, I think, that's something I've been talking to people a lot about lately is, I think we think, and some of the advice out there is, use this time to your advantage. You're going to have more time to do things, but we're not always going to feel motivated to do stuff right now because of all that we're going through that maybe we're not even realizing, right? And part of that shock and, feeling like a little bit walking through a cloud, like walking in a fog, like you had mentioned. So I've really been, inviting people to lower the bar. I'm calling it lower the bar, right? Where, you may think, oh, it's a great time to get done all these projects at home or learn a new language, or, you have all these intentions to do these great things. And this might not be the time, if it feels like it's something that's helpful to you and you feel productive and that's helping you cope with this, then that's great. Go for it. But if it feels like pressure you're putting on yourself to do more just because you might have more time at home,
Right.
I would say, let that pressure off,
Yeah.
give yourself some grace and lower that bar way low. That's what I'm working with people on right now, including for myself, because I realized I'm talking to people about lowering the bar and taking the pressure off right now, and then realized I had been putting all this pressure on myself to do all these blog articles and do a class and all these things. I'm like, okay,
Right.
Dawn, like let's hold it here, so yeah.
Right. And the other thing that's so weird about this is it's so indefinite. We don't have an end date.
Right.
Any coping mechanisms for kind of the uncertainty of it all? I think that's really where we all are at. That's the base of all of our fears and anxiety. It's just the uncertainty of where we're at.
Absolutely. The uncertainty is so hard. Our human brains do not like uncertainty. We like decisions. We like black or white, safe or dangerous. And right now we just don't know. We don't have a timeline. We don't we don't know when this will all end, right? And I think that's been one of the hardest things for people to cope with, is that uncertainty. And so I think, again, coping strategies for that are so individualized. And that's why I've been inviting people to reach out for support. And sometimes that can mean reaching out to a counselor. And that's what we're here for. This is what we train to do. And even though we are, just kind of putting a plug in for our profession, even though we are experiencing the same feelings that you are, we're trained to support other people with all of this, with their feelings and with their thoughts. And so I would invite people to, even if you haven't given it a try, if you're struggling, like this is a good time to reach out for that kind of support.
Excellent. Excellent. Dawn, you're awesome. Was there anything else you felt like you wanted to hit in this? Address?
Let me see. Let me look at my notes.
Okay, look at your notes. That's fine. That's the joy of editing.
Yeah, exactly. I think I kind of hit everything. The self-compassion piece is huge.
Yeah.
And just that the pandemic, it feels like this has been kind of the great equalizer in a way. Nobody's getting out of this without some degree of stress. No one,
Right.
So that can be, I don't know if it can be comforting to know that, we are all sort of in the same boat here.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like that.
Yeah. I think let's see, is there anything else? Another piece I'd been thinking is sometimes it's, sorry, I'm getting my foot caught in the boards. I think just, acknowledging, and as we talked about at the beginning a little bit, acknowledging and naming what you're feeling can be very helpful. And telling somebody else, right? So it's not only helpful for us to notice and name what we're feeling, our emotions, but it also helps the other person too, because then when they are having that feeling, that feels like, oh, okay, I know I'm not alone in this. So I think that can be really helpful as well in dealing with the grief, the uncertainty, all of that is talking about it. I think this is huge. So I'm so grateful that you had this idea of, let's talk about our feelings, right?
Right.
And I thought, yes, let's do that, because I think it's so important. And so many people, I think, are really kind of putting on a brave face and not talking about what's going on inside.
Yeah.
And of course, because that's my business and what I do day in and day out, I think it's just so important that people do that.